Hello, welcome to Phantom Homicide, the Clutter family murders.
It's a case that really chills you. Not some made-up thriller. This actually happened. Holcomb, Kansas, November 15th, 1959.
It really did. And it wasn't just a crime, it felt like something broke in the American psyche that day. It changed how people thought about safety, about violence, about, well, everything.
Absolutely. When people talk about the kind of the end of that post-war American innocence, this is often the moment they point to. That feeling of simple security just vanished.
So today, we're really going to dig into this. The brutal, just senseless quadruple murder of Herbert Clutter, his wife Bonnie, and their two teenagers, Nancy and Kenyon.
And the setting is just so important to grasp, isn't it? This wasn't Chicago or New York. This was Holcomb, Kansas, way out west, flat, wide open country.
The heartland.
Exactly. The kind of place people described as full of friendly, God-fearing folks. The famous detail, people didn't even lock their doors. There was this inherent trust.
Which makes the shock factor just immense.
Yeah.
It wasn't just that a crime happened. It was this crime happening to this family, the Clutters, who everyone looked up to, wiped out. For no reason anyone could understand at first. It was just alien.
Yeah, before this, if you saw violence on this scale getting national attention, it usually had some kind of, political angle, like that Michigan school bombing back in 27 that was about taxes, however horrific.
Right, understandable motive in a twisted way.
But the Clutter murders, and you had the Starkweather killings not long before, too, they signaled something new, something terrifying. Violence that was just personal, random, inexplicable.
You could just imagine the fear that gripped Kansas.
Yeah.
Once the details started coming out, how planned it was, how methodical people must have been terrified, bolting doors, checking locks.
Oh, absolutely, sleeping with guns nearby. Because until they caught whoever did it, the killer could be anyone, could be your neighbor. That quiet little town, Holcomb, its innocence was just shattered overnight.
So our mission here today is to unpack all of it, meticulously. We'll look at the killers, Richard Hickok and Perry Smith, this really unlikely messed up pair.
Mm-hmm. And the investigation, which was flawed but ultimately relentless, led by the KBI.
And then there's the whole shadow cast by Truman Capote's book, In Cold Blood. Groundbreaking, sure, but controversial. We need to talk about that, too.
Definitely. It's a huge part of the story's legacy. Okay, so let's go back. Back to November 1959.
To really feel the impact, you need to understand who the Clutters were. In Holcomb, in nearby Garden City, they were it, the American dream, basically. Successful, respected, devout.
Herb Clutter, the father, was 48. He was a real Kansas success story. College educated, built this incredibly prosperous farm. He wasn't just farming, he was innovating.
Yeah, I already founded the Kansas Wheat Growers Association.
That's right. And President Eisenhower appointed him to the Federal Farm Credit Board. So he had reach. He wasn't just a local figure.
And he ran a big operation. Lots of employees sometimes.
Yeah, up to 18 farmhands during busy seasons. And known for being fair, paid well, treated people decently, respected for his integrity.
And here's that detail, the one that becomes just tragically central.
The money, or the lack of it.
Right. He did almost all his business by check, meticulous records. He just didn't keep large amounts of cash at home. And importantly, no safe.
Absolutely no safe. That's key. His wife, Bonnie Mae Fox Clutter, she was 45. Her life seems to have been, well, more difficult.
Capote's book paints a picture of someone quite troubled, right? Though the family disputed some of that later.
They did. But it seems clear she struggled. There are reports of physical ailments, but also deep clinical depression, possibly linked to having her children. A real contrast to Herb's very public, very active life. She was more withdrawn, adds a layer of complexity to the family picture.
And the kid's still at home. Nancy, 16. The golden girl.
Totally. Straight A's, popular, active in everything 4-H, played the clarinet. Known for being kind, too. Apparently, she'd teach younger girls baking and sewing, just really well regarded.
Your brother, Kenyon, he was 15.
Yeah, the youngest, the only son left at home. Much quieter than Nancy. Bespectacled, more introverted.
Right.
Into hunting, woodworking. And he was fixing up this old pickup truck.
Even though he couldn't drive it yet.
Right. His dad let him buy it. That was his project. Just typical teenage stuff, Wholesome kids. Completely unprepared for what was coming.
So that night, November 15th, just the four of them were there. The two older daughters, Eviana and Beverly, had already moved out.
Just the four of them. And what happened next? It wasn't just a murder. It was a calculated, horrific sequence that just broke the town's sense of reality.
The way they were found tells you so much. When the police got there, Chief Geisler, Assistant Chief Rollander, they walked into this modern, comfortable home.
that had been turned into, well, a slaughterhouse, systematically.
Let's walk through it because the details are brutal but important. Herb Clutter, found first.
In the basement, in the furnace room. He was
Yeah.
sprawled on a mattress box, just laid out on the concrete floor, bound, yes, hands tied, mouth taped shut. And it wasn't just a gunshot. He'd been stabbed first. His throat was slashed, vicious. Then shot in the head. He was wearing pajamas.
Just awful. And Kenyon.
In the next room, the basement playroom, he was on a couch, also bound and gagged. But then there's this bizarre detail.
The pillow.
Yeah. A clean white pillow placed behind his head, almost like a gesture of comfort, right before he was shot in the head with the shotgun.
It makes no sense. Comfort before killing.
Exactly. Upstairs, Bonnie Clutter, found in her bed, bound, gagged, tucked in, almost like they were putting her to sleep. Then shot in the side of the head.
And Nancy.
Same thing. In her own room, bound, tucked into bed. But strangely, she wasn't gagged. Why? We don't know. Also killed by a single shotgun blast.
So the shotgun was the main weapon for all four, ultimately. Even Herb after the knife.
Correct. A single blast each, except for Herb's additional injuries. And they were careful they collected all the spent shotgun shells. No immediate ballistics evidence left behind.
And that heartbreaking detail about Nancy.
Yeah.
Hiding her watch.
Yes. She'd hidden a watch her father had given her inside her shoe. A small, final act of defiance or preservation, maybe, while everything else was being turned upside down.
That pillow detail for Kenyon, Nancy not being gagged, it's just so unsettling. Is it like a moment of pity? Or is it something much darker, like a calculated cruelty, giving comfort right before the end?
It points to this incredible psychological mess, really, this dissonance. We know from later accounts they apparently offered Bonnie a chair while she waited in the bathroom. They supposedly loosened Kenyon's ropes a bit when he complained they were too tight.
Why? Why do those things if you're just going to kill them all anyway? They were in the house for, what, 2 hours?
Exactly. 2 hours of these minor comforts mixed with terror, ending in methodical execution. It's this core contradiction that makes the psychology of the killers so complex and, frankly, so disturbing. It hints that the motive wasn't just simple robbery gone wrong. Something else was happening in their heads.
And that contradiction leads us straight to the perpetrators. The two men who drove all that way across Kansas that night, Richard Hickok and Perry Smith.
Yeah, an unholy alliance is a good way to put it. Bound by delusion, desperation. Just a terrible combination.
Let's look at them individually first. Dick Hickok, 28 years old, just out of prison on parole.
Right. Kansas State Penitentiary. He was apparently pretty smart, above average intelligence, but a con artist, a smooth talker. History was mostly petty stuff, bad checks, that sort of thing. Impulsive, wanted easy money, fast.
And he had that facial asymmetry from a car crash.
Yeah, bad accident back in 1950. Left his face slightly lopsided, eyes uneven. Maybe that contributed to some kind of internal dissatisfaction or chip on his shoulder. He seemed like this small-time crook, desperate to pull off something big, the perfect score.
Then there's Perry Smith, 31. He seems deeper, more complex,
Yeah.
and definitely more dangerous in the end.
I think so. He was a Korean War vet, got an honorable discharge, but his childhood was just brutal. Abuse in an orphanage run by nuns, alcoholic parents, just trauma after trauma.
And the motorcycle accident?
Terrible.
Yeah.
Mangled his legs, left them dwarfish, as he described it, caused him constant chronic pain. He called himself an aspirin addict, just lived with this agony.
But he was self-educated, wasn't he? Despite not finishing school?
Very much so. Read constantly history, poetry, philosophy, trying to make up for it, you know. He was reserved, dreamed of finding buried treasure in Mexico, had this whole fantasy. Even though he couldn't swim or sail a boat, he just needed the money to get started.
So how did these two very different guys end up together?
They were cellmates. Briefly, just for about 2 weeks at Lansing Prison, that's where the dynamic formed. Dick saw Perry as this tough guy, a natural killer.
Why? Based on what?
Based on a story Perry made up about killing a man in Nevada with a bicycle chain, total fabrication. But Dick bought it. He needed someone he thought could handle the violence.
And Terry. What did he see in Dick?
Perry saw Dick as the planner, the steady hand, the guy who could actually make things happen, make the Mexico dream real, even though he apparently found Dick's constant bragging a bit annoying.
So this brings us to the plan itself, the perfect score. Where did that idea even come from?
It came from one single source. Another ex-con, Floyd Wells. He'd been Hickok's cellmate too, and years earlier, back in '49, he'd worked for Herb Clutter for a short time.
Okay, so he knew the family.
Knew of them.
Yeah.
And he told Hickok this story, that Herb Clutter was incredibly wealthy, and this is the critical part, kept huge amounts of cash, maybe $10,000, locked in a safe in his office at home.
$10,000 in cash. In 1959, that's a fortune.
Exactly. Wells claimed he saw Clutter pay a big bill in cash once and just assumed there was always that much lying around.
And Koch just latched onto that.
Instantly. This was it, the cinch, the score that would set them up for life in Mexico. He immediately contacted Perry, who was out west drifting around Idaho.
And Perry agreed, even though his parole banned him from Kansas.
It did. He violated his parole to meet Dick in Olathe, Kansas. The lure of that money, of Mexico, was too strong.
But the whole premise, it was wrong.
Completely wrong. Tragically wrong. Wells was remembering, or misremembering, something from 10 years prior. Maybe there was a safe in the old Clutter house back in 1949, but in the new house, where they lived in 59, no safe. And Herb Clutter absolutely did not keep large sums of cash.
So the entire murderous plan was based on a faulty memory, a fantasy.
A total delusion. Hickok got paroled in August 59, got a job as a mechanic, probably just for show, as well suspected. The real plan was always the robbery.
So November 14th, 1959, they get a car.
Stole a 49 Chevy, drove over 400 miles across Kansas, arrived in Holcomb under a full moon, and they had made a pact, get the money.
And leave no witnesses.
Leave no witnesses. That was part of the plan from the start.
So they get inside, unlocked door. The fantasy of the $10,000 score is about to hit reality hard.
Right. They sneak in, flashlight beam cutting through the dark, straight to Herb Clutter's office on the first floor, searching for that safe.
Which wasn't there.
Total failure from the get-go. Then Herb Clutter wakes up, maybe the light, the noise. He confronts them.
And he tells them the truth, right? No safe. Offers what little cash he has.
Exactly. Tries to reason with them, says, look, there's no safe. Take the cash. I have about $30. But Hickok, he's so fixated on that $10,000 figure from Wells. He just can't believe it. Thinks Clutter must be lying, hiding it somewhere.
So the search just escalates. They tear the place apart.
Pretty much. For the next 2 hours, they're ransacking the house, trying to find this non-existent fortune, while terrorizing the family.
And in the end, after all that, what did they actually get?
Pathetic. Less than $50 in total cash. Herb's binoculars, and Kenyon's little portable radio. That was it. The perfect score.
Less than $50, a radio and binoculars for 4 lives. It's sickening.
It is. And those 2 hours inside the house, that's where the psychology gets so incredibly disturbing and complex. They were methodical about controlling the family.
Moving them around.
Yeah. Herb and Kenyon taken to the basement. Bonnie and Nancy initially put in an upstairs bathroom together, then separated into their rooms, all restrained.
And this is where those weird moments of, what? Humanity, dissonance, come in again.
Right. The details of how they tied them up. Herb gagged, bound, put on that mattress box on the cold floor. Kenyon, first tied to a steam pipe, must have been agony, then moved to the couch in the playroom.
And they loosened his ropes when he complained.
Apparently so, just slightly, and then placed that pillow under his head. Why?
And offering Bonnie a chair while she waited. Tucking Nancy in, but not gagging her. It just doesn't track with the end result.
It suggests they were stalling, maybe hesitating, wrestling with what they were about to do. Dick and Perry definitely debated what to do next. The robbery was a bust, but that pact they'd made...
Leave no witnesses?
Leave no witnesses, that was still the plan. Dick was apparently furious about the lack of money, but he seemed almost incapable of actually carrying out the violence himself. Despite all his big talk beforehand about wanting to spread hair on them walls...
He froze.
It seems like it. Perry even said later he was trying to call Dick's bluff. He expected Dick to stop him when he, Perry, made the first move. But Dick did it.
So Perry took the lead. With the knife first.
That's the account. Perry picked up the knife, went to Herb Clutter, slit his throat first, a terribly intimate, brutal act, and then shot him in the head, while Dick just stood there holding the flashlight.
And Perry's quote about that moment.
It's chilling. I didn't want to harm the man. I thought he was a very nice gentleman, soft-spoken. I thought so right up to the moment I cut his throat. Just absolute psychological detachment.
And then the others, quickly after.
Yeah. Perry shot Kenyon down there in the basement. Then they went upstairs. Nancy and Bonnie were shot. The pact fulfilled. Senselessly.
But there was some confusion about who shot the women, wasn't there? In the confessions.
There was. Perry initially said in his oral confession that Dick killed the women upstairs, but then he refused to sign that version. Said he felt sorry for Dick's mother.
So he took the blame for all 4 in the written statement.
Essentially, yes. Hickok, for his part, always insisted Perry killed all four. Honestly, at that point, legally, it doesn't really matter who pulled the trigger for which victim.
Yeah.
They were both fully complicit in the plan and the execution.
And the haul. Less than $50, the radio, the binoculars. They even missed $2 Nancy had for church.
Yeah, just sitting on her dresser. They missed it. The whole thing netted them basically nothing. Gas money, maybe?
It's almost impossible to comprehend. A massacre for pocket change.
The Clutters died purely because they were witnesses to a failed robbery that was based on a mistake. It was entirely about Hickok and Smith's desperate fantasy, not about the victims themselves. Utterly, tragically unnecessary.
So the investigation starts. But the killers left almost nothing behind, right? Took the gun, the shells.
Very little physical evidence initially. The cord and tape used for binding were common items, hard to trace. The pressure on law enforcement was intense. And the lead investigator, Alvin Dewey, this was personal for him.
He knew Clutter.
Yeah, they were personal friends. Dewey was with the KBI, the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, like the state FBI. He famously swore he'd stick with the case no matter how long it took. It became his obsession. He led a team of 4 other KDI agents, plus help from other departments.
What about forensics? Anything useful early on?
Technology was limited then, obviously, but Assistant Chief Rich Ralder was a skilled photographer. He got some crucial shots, a faint, bloody footprint in the basement furnace room, apparently not even visible to the naked eye, but the photo caught it, and a clear picture of the tire tracks from the getaway car outside. They were building a case, piece by painstaking piece. Dewey himself did over 200 interviews, chased down hundreds of leads.
But the case stalled. For weeks.
For 6 long, agonizing weeks, yeah. It seemed like it might go cold. The real break didn't come from forensics. It came from an informant.
And Floyd Wells, the guy who gave Hickok the bad tip in the first place.
The very same. Still in prison, he heard about the murders, put 2 and 2 together, and decided to talk. Contacted Agent Wayne Owens. He wanted the reward money.
So he told them about Hickok and the plan to rob Clutter for $10,000.
Exactly. Even though the detail about the safe was wrong, the core information, Hickok, Smith, the plan to rob Clutter, pointed directly at the killers.
Okay, so this is where it gets tricky, the timeline controversy. Capote's book says the KBI jumped right on Wells' tip.
That's what Capote wrote. In Cold Blood, presents it as an immediate breakthrough. But later evidence, including KBI's own files, suggests something different. Dewey might have initially dismissed the lead.
Why?
He apparently suspected locals at first, someone with a grudge against Clutter. It seems he didn't fully pursue the Hickok-Smith angle right away.
How long was the delay?
Some reports, like one in the Wall Street Journal, based on KBI files, suggest it might have been 5 days, 5 critical days.
And why is that 5-day window so important?
Because during that potential delay, Hickok and Smith were possibly in Florida. And there's a suspicion, never proven, but a strong suspicion that they might have committed another quadruple murder there, the Walker family murders.
Oh my God. So the delay might have had fatal consequences elsewhere.
It's a deeply uncomfortable possibility that if the KBI had acted faster on Wells's tip, maybe another family could have been saved. It casts a shadow over the investigation's narrative.
But eventually, they did focus on Hickok and Smith. And the manhunt began.
Yes, and Hickok and Smith were all over the place. Kansas City first. Hickok was already writing bad checks there to get cash, then down to Mexico, pawned the binoculars there, back up through California, Omaha, Iowa, stole another car there, then Florida, and finally Nevada.
And they were caught in Las Vegas.
That's right. December 30th, 1959, pulled over in that stolen car. And crucially, they had the boots, one of which matched that faint, bloody footprint Rollator had photographed in the Clutter basement.
That was the key evidence.
That tied them directly to the scene. Dewey and his team flew straight to Vegas, interrogated them, and eventually got the confessions.
The trial followed pretty quickly, didn't it, back in Garden City?
March 1960. The defense strategy was basically temporary insanity. But the court appointed 3 local doctors, general practitioners, not psychiatrists.
Not specialists.
No. And they found Hickok and Smith sane under the legal standard of the time, the Imnaten rule. Basically, did they know what they were doing was wrong?
Which they clearly did. Even though later psychiatrists did find signs of mental illness, especially in Smith.
Yes, one expert diagnosed potential paranoid schizophrenia in Smith and thought Hickok's old head injuries might have played a role. But legally, under Imnaten, they were deemed sane. The jury didn't take long.
45 minutes.
Just 45 minutes to come back with guilty verdicts and recommend the death penalty. which was mandatory at the time for that conviction.
And then 5 years on death row.
5 years of appeals, legal battles. The case became huge nationally, partly because of, well, because of Truman Capote.
Right. The execution itself was April 1965.
April 14th, 1965, hanged at Leavenworth. Hickok first, then Smith. They had a last meal, shrimp, fries, ice cream. Kind of surreal.
What about their final words?
Hickok apparently shook one of the agent's hands, Roy Church, said he held no grudge. Smith, though, the war vet, he got a small burial allowance because of his service. He used his last moments to condemn capital punishment, called it legally and morally wrong, said an apology would be meaningless.
And that brings us squarely to Capote, In Cold Blood, the book that made this case immortal, really.
Absolutely. Capote read a tiny news brief about the murders in the New York Times and was immediately hooked. He saw the story potential.
Went out to Kansas pretty quickly, with Harper Lee.
Yeah, in late 1959, before the killers were even caught, and Harper Lee was with him. This was just before To Kill a Mockingbird came out and made her famous. Capote was fascinated by the contrast, this brutal crime, and this seemingly idyllic, pious Midwestern setting.
And he spent years on it, talked to everyone.
6 years, amassed something like 8,000 pages of notes, interviewed investigators, townspeople, and crucially, he developed this intense relationship with Perry Smith while Smith was on death row.
The book comes out in 1966. Huge success. Creates this whole new genre, the nonfiction novel.
Massive. Critically acclaimed, bestseller, still one of the biggest true crime books ever, but Capote insisted it was immaculately factual. Invented nothing.
But that claim started getting questioned almost immediately, right?
Oh, yeah. Locals, critics, they pointed out discrepancies. The most famous one, which Capote eventually admitted to, was the entire final scene. That poignant conversation between Agent Dewey and Nancy's friend Susan Kidwell in the cemetery. Pure invention. Made it for literary effect, for closure.
So, not immaculately factual, then?
Not quite, and it goes deeper. The fact-checking process itself has been scrutinized. The New Yorker fact-checker, Sandy Campbell, was a friend of Capote's. Campbell later said he mostly just checked the easy stuff, dates, names, distances, complex dialogue, scenes where Capote wasn't present, descriptions of victims' thoughts. That was left on author.
Which opens the door for shaping the narrative.
Exactly. And we know things were left out, deliberately. There's strong evidence, revealed later by a former classmate, that Nancy Clutter had a secret life Capote knew about but omitted.
What kind of secret life?
She was apparently dating this older man, the classmate's father, referred to vaguely as Jared in Capote's notes or book. She was maybe planning to break up with her steady boyfriend, Bobby Rupp, who was briefly an early suspect, remember to date this other man.
And Capote knew this, possibly from her diary.
It seems very likely he knew, but he left it out. Why? Probably to protect Nancy's reputation, maybe at the family's request. It complicated the image of perfect, untouched innocence. It made her, well, a normal, complex teenager with secrets.
So the nonfiction novel wasn't just adding literary flair. It was actively curating the facts to fit a specific narrative. The narrative of spotless virtue violated.
Precisely. It reinforced that idea of Holcomb's absolute innocence being shattered rather than showing a family, however tragic their end, that had normal human complexities.
And how did the people in Kansas feel about the book?
Many resented it deeply, felt Capote had exploited their town's tragedy for fame and money. The crime itself had already changed the community. People locked doors, trust eroded. The book just felt like another violation to some.
Even Dewey, the lead investigator, acknowledged things were invented, like that ending scene.
He did. While saying the overall account of the crime was accurate, he confirmed Capote took liberties. And those KBI files suggesting the delay on the Wells tip, that also contradicts Capote's neat timeline. His claim of perfect accuracy seems like, well, a stretch. He prioritized narrative power over absolute factual purity.
So wrapping this all up, what are we left with? Two damaged individuals driven by a fantasy of easy money that didn't exist.
Committing an unthinkable massacre for less than $50 and a couple of cheap items, destroying 6 lives in the process, the 4 Clutters, and ultimately their own.
It's seen as this turning point, the end of 1950s innocence. But then you have the whole controversy around In Cold Blood, the invented scenes, the omitted facts, like Nancy's secret. It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It really does. It leaves us with a provocative thought, something for you, the listener, to chew on.
When a crime becomes this iconic, this legendary, partly because of the story told about it, does the messy, complicated, sometimes uncomfortable truth of what actually happened matter less than the power and endurance of the narrative that gets crafted?
Capote created a masterpiece of the genre, no doubt. It shaped true crime writing, but he built it by making certain choices certain ethical compromises, perhaps, about what truth to include and what to leave out. A brilliant story, but maybe built on a slightly shaky foundation of fact.
Okay, so we hope you like our today's discussion. For more such discussions, subscribe to our channel, Phantom Homicide.